Welcome, everybody, to Caturday Checkdown. My name is Jordan Mathus. I'm here with Braden Nevius. As always, it's been a really long time since I've gotten to talk to everybody. Braden, I know you feel the same. It's so good to be back. We're, 16 days from the season starting officially, and I cannot wait to get under the lights, see those new LED lights in Kroger Field. Braden, how the hell are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. I tell you what, it feels like this season more than any other has really snuck up on me. I've had a lot going on the past year or so. Just bought a house, bought a truck. Thank you, appreciate it. So just honestly, haven't really been able to get into the thick of things here until just very recently, and all of a sudden it's 8:30 on August 15th, and we are, like you said, just a couple weeks away from kickoff. And I'm finally starting to feel it. This is honestly, doing this podcast tonight is kind of the first time I've really felt like we're there. I mean, on Saturday we'll be a week away from our first major college football game kicking off. So I'm excited to be back and excited to get into it.
Yeah, and for the listeners, when I was clapping, that was my hands. I just wanted to make sure, just in case you're not, the way you're listening, I don't know if it may come off as something else. Congratulations, Braden, on that new house. So as we try and dig, I'm going to give a disclaimer here. Braden, I know you said that you've been pretty busy, and due to some unforeseen circumstances, I did not see myself doing this podcast tonight. I've taken a little break away from everything. I haven't been out to the stadium, and to be honest, I haven't heard a lot of Stoops quotes, or not that there's been many, or I haven't really gotten any practices this year yet. But as we lead into the next couple of episodes, you're going to hear me talk more and more about the things I see and hear as we head out that way and get closer to kickoff. But Braden, man, since we've been gone, there's been a lot happening. I think the last we left off, we were talking about the A&M rumors. We talked about the potential of Stoops leaving the program. And there was a moment after that Louisville game last year where I said, look, I think this is going to happen. And I think all up through the night, all of VBN anxiously waited for some news. And it was a long roller coaster ride, emotions from, high to low. And we didn't really know what to expect. But luckily for some people, we got Stoops back. I know that plenty of people out there were wanting some change and wanting something new. Braden, I just want to start off and ask you, man, what's your take on it? I know a lot of people, like I said, don't want Stoops to be the head coach of Kentucky, and I don't necessarily know if I agree with that. But at the same time, I'm a little bit drawn back by some of his comments in the previous few weeks.
Yeah, I actually had the unfortunate task of writing the Stoops to A&M article.
That's right.
That was published because all the reports suggested that that's what was happening. And, maybe it was a Tennessee Greg Schiano situation. There's a lot of, rumors and stuff out there that may never be confirmed true or not. But yeah, obviously when the dust settled, Stoops stayed in Lexington. And I'll be honest, at the time, we were just coming off of a big win against Louisville, but overall it was a disappointing season after a very good start. And I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I was one of the people who was not opposed to change. I'm not saying that I was on the front row, cheering for it, but I wasn't necessarily hating the idea of change. Now, given what happened a few months later in another program in the university, I'm happy that we don't have a situation where we're heading in to a year with two new head coaches. So, well, actually, if you think about it, in all women's basketball, three new head coaches. So I'm kind of happy that it all ended up going the way it did. Stoops is obviously proven to be very consistent. Now, we'd like some consistency maybe with a little more winning on top of that. But I mean, listen, at the end of the day, it's the SEC, and given what he inherited and what he's done over the past decade, it's hard to say that you want him gone that bad because it's been probably the best decade of football in the program history.
And Braden, let me ask you to just piggyback off of that. Do you think some of these comments he's made as of late in regards to NIL and trying to compete with the big boys, as as he may say, in the pony up comments, and even a couple of weeks ago, some of his other comments that kind of went to the we don't have the money. Do you see that and him having to physically not only recruit the players, but recruit the big donors of the program back to stay on football? Because right now, I mean, I feel like basketball's got all the momentum in the world. I don't know, and this is a different podcast for a different time, but I feel like everybody was ready for a change, whether it be football or basketball. We wanted something different because let's be real, the last few years as a Kentucky fan they've sucked. So now that there's some new juice and new energy, maybe some of those donors that were going toward Kentucky football have stepped back a little bit and said, now I want to give a little bit to the basketball team too. Do you think that was like a public cry for help by Mark Stoops to Mitch Barnhart and then to all the people that donate money? Or do you think it was just Kentucky doesn't produce like the other SEC schools, and moving forward, we need to?
I'm going to give you the cop-out answer and say I think it's a mixture of both.
Which one would you say more, though?
I do feel like it's a cry for help, more so than the other. But I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we're not putting up the money that Texas or Florida or an Alabama in terms of football goes. Georgia and others, or Tennessee, that are putting up in terms of NIL, and that's just that's just how it is, unfortunately. But I do think Stoops is maybe trying to say pony up without saying pony up. But I mean, he has a point. I mean, this is just how college football is these days. I mean, whoever has the most money is going to have the most success. And so it's going to take these donors and these people with a lot of influence in the university to really make having an elite football program possible. And I think it is, which is why I think Stoops obviously was very much enticed to go to College Station, because I'm sure he felt like he was going to get those resources and assets there. But now, he's here. I mean, and I'm happy he's here. And I hope, obviously, I don't have the money to pony up. So I hope that the people who do have the money to pony up will, and that we can continue to build on our success of the past decade.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Do you see a scenario where Kentucky can, because I mean, you add Texas and Oklahoma into the conference now, even more money that Kentucky has to compete with. Do you see a situation in these next few years in which maybe they're just going to get outbid and that's just the end of it? Or do you see another Barryon Brown or somebody not from Kentucky like Barryon Brown that can step in as a 5-star player, Deion Walker, for example, and kind of make an impact to transition into a new era of college football in which some of the stuff may be a little bit more evened?
Yeah. I think Kentucky can still get the guys. It just may have to be a different kind of approach than what a lot of other schools, especially in the SEC, have to do. And I just think that's how it's going to have to be, because I don't think Kentucky's going to have the money to put to compete with a Texas or an Oklahoma or Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, etc.
So what kind of pitch do you think that would be?
What is it?
What kind of pitch do you think that would be?
I mean, I think it's going to be like a like a rooted in substance instead of like a family kind of atmosphere. Which I mean, Kentucky football has been kind of putting out there since Stoops has been there. But it's going to take a player who isn't necessarily looking for a buttload of money, and it's going to take a special kind of player. I think those guys are out there, um, and I mean, and that's not to say that there's not money to be made here for athletes. I think there is. There's plenty of opportunities, but maybe not as many as some other schools. So it's just going to take, which I think Stoops and the guys can make it happen, but it's going to be harder than say uh, Josh Heupel at Tennessee or whatever. It's going to take a little bit more push.
So, Braden, to be honest, you and I have not really talked a whole lot, just in regards to sports or life or anything. I mean, we've kept up a little bit, but like I said, we've both just been living two different lives. How much have you kept up with the potential of having, like, I don't want to say an even playing field, but having each college have this X amount of dollars for, say, to spread evenly across the programs? Have you read into that? Because there's a whole thing going on right now about Congress trying to pass this bill in which each program or each school gets X amount of dollars, and you can decide for yourselves what you do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for parity in college sports. Obviously, I think this is I just think we're in a situation right now where like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and I think there needs to be something that can even the playing field. Um, and we're what 3-4 years into the NIL era of college sports now, and we still haven't really figured out how to even the playing field. Um, to where I would like to see it.
And do
But
you think that's a Mitch Barnhart thing, or do you think that's a just not in a good market?
uh, I don't think it's
And
the
don't give me a
market.
cop out answer, Braden.
No, I'm not going to give you a comment. I mean, I think it's a Mitch Barnhart thing because I mean, to me, when it comes to college athletics, the market doesn't really matter. Um, I mean, it matters. Okay, all right. For those who can't see, Jordan's giving me a sideways look. I mean, yes. What I mean by market, I mean Alabama's got tons of NIL money, and Alabama's not a big market. I mean Tennessee's got a big NIL, like that, and they're not a big. I mean they're not, compared to these other schools like a USC or a UCLA or etc. So I don't think the market matters as much in college athletics as it does obviously in the pros. Um, but I mostly think that it's a Mitch Barnhart thing, just because Kentucky's been so far behind on everything when it comes to NIL, and unfortunately, it's hurt. I think it's hurt the basketball program, the football program, really just every program, honestly. And so hopefully sooner rather than later we can get caught up on this NIL stuff.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you there. I do think there's a um, just a it's almost like there's an elephant in the room between Kentucky fans and Mitch Barnhart. Like, we keep seeing and hearing all of these things about how Kentucky's NIL issues are so bad, but I feel like there haven't been a lot of corrections to it. Like, how are we going to fix this? Yes, Club Blue has done a great job, and there have been another NIL company that's been in there and doing what I think needs to be done. But I just feel like we need more of it. Transitioning, Braden, I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, we haven't been out there at the practice field or anything. So if you're looking for inside news, I don't think this is the podcast for you. But next week, maybe the week after, I will be full of that. But as we transition into this new season, I kind of want to look at each position group and just get your takes. I think we should start off at quarterback. I did get to make it out to one practice this year, and it was in the beginning of fall camp. So, a lot of new eyes, a lot of new, it was new. we'll just say that. I will say the thing I noticed, I don't think Brock Vandegrift played the best ball he could. And what I mean by that, there were some ducks thrown. They were a little wobbly, and I don't think they were as accurate as I was kind of hoping for. Now, this isn't an in-game scenario. This isn't life or death for Brock. I think that new offense, new players around him, and I at the end of the day, it's some guys just play good on certain days. And the question lies is what happens after that? How do you fix yourself? The entire team is looking at that and saying we need the quarterback to be the quarterback and to lead us, because that's essentially what a quarterback is a leader. Just one day, I happened to see Gavin Wimsatt look really good. I mean, he was throwing some really good balls. And if you want some more optimism that I kind of have for the future, I think our boy Cutter Boley looked really good too. Now, he's added, 15, 20 pounds of muscle since he's gotten on campus this year. Since high school. And I think that's going to help him really well progress as the seasons pass along. And Kentucky may finally get a guy that comes in highly touted and ends up playing for, i.e. Drew Barker, a few years and being a really good quarterback.
Yeah. So as far as the quarterbacks go, okay. I don't think we're going to know exactly what Brock Vandegrift is until he steps on the field in that first game. You're going to hear the rumors at practice. You're going to hear what, people said at Georgia. I just think, and it happened last year with Devin Leary because he was coming off that injury. And, to be honest, we heard a lot of great things really throughout practice. And then, the season got there and, yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of Kentucky fans will think of Leary's one season that fondly. But I just think Vandegrift's going to be a wait and see. Obviously, you can't deny the talent. He was a 5-star, and he was at Georgia for a reason. He was competing. I think he got pretty deep into fall practice last year before Georgia announced Carson Beck as the starter. So
there for a while, it seemed like a coin flip.
So we're possibly a good or bad practice away for Vandegrift being the starter at Georgia. Which obviously, that's pretty darn good. And but I just think it's going to be a wait and see. I've seen some of the same things you've seen. It just in some, obviously just in some short clips and highlight videos of it doesn't seem like he has the tightest of spirals on his balls, unfortunately. But that's okay, as long as it gets in the hands of the chest of the receiver, right? Who cares how it spins? But honestly, and you're right, this entire quarterback room is new, kinda. Bo Allen's back, but he went away for a little bit.
Under a new offensive coordinator.
And then you mentioned so obviously the offensive coordinator is new. All the quarterbacks are new. So this is all very new, and I have cautious optimism because last year I'll tell you I was the front of the line on the Devin Leary is going to be great train, and it fell off the tracks. So this year I'm coming in with a little bit more of a cautious approach, but I still have optimism because obviously you can't deny the talent, and there really hasn't been any competition. It's been Brock's job since he got to campus. So that has to mean something because it's not like he's got just random guys off the street behind him. I think, you mentioned Wimsett and then you mentioned Boley, and then of course Bo Allen. Those are solid guys, I think, behind him. So and it's really been no question since day one who the starter is going to be. So that gives me some hope.
And man, like I said, I don't know how much you've kept up with this, but spring ball rolled around, and how about Bo Allen being a pretty good second guy, maybe? Like, there were a lot of reports coming out that maybe Bo Allen may end up being pretty high in the depth chart. What do you make of that after his unsuccessful run at Tarleton and just his career as a whole? Because we saw him as Kentucky media, Kentucky fans, his first year at Kentucky is like, this is going to be a guy that's going to be a third or fourth string his entire career. And to see him kind of progress up the depth chart now, we talk about the age and experience and everything that comes with it and the mindset. But as far as having a guy like that, for one, how much value does it bring? And for two, what does it say about Bo Allen that, maybe he's got some play to him?
I mean, of course, I've always rooted for Bo. He's, obviously from Lexington. Hard not to root for a Kentucky guy. But I'll tell you, this year, I mean, there's a lot of Kentucky guys in that quarterback room. You got Cutter Boley, Bo, and Gavin Wimsett, all from Kentucky. So Brock's the only guy who's not, from the state. But I would be, I think I'd be very happy if we got to see Bo Allen in that, backup role. I'm not saying I want to see him on the field, but obviously, it seems like he's done well. And also it helps that he's been in the program before, so he knows how Stoops likes things to be managed. Of course, the offense was under different coaching at the time, but still, he has an idea of what is expected in terms of that UK football culture. So I mean, I'm happy for Bo, and I'm happy he's back in Lexington.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about the running, or we talked about the quarterbacks being a we're gonna have to see what we have first game. We're gonna know what we have, but at the same time, do you think having an injured Chip Trainum and maybe a young running back having to take over a little bit, besides also Demi Sumo Karnbay, do you see a lot of passing that first game? Like, do you think we'll really know what we have, or do you think it's going to be one where Kentucky pounds the rock, where I think this year you're not going to be able to do as much?
Yeah. Obviously, sucks to lose your starting running back for the first couple weeks of the season. Thankfully, it's not season-ending or anything too major. So
finally, knock on wood. Finally, Kentucky doesn't have that injury.
As of right now, there's still a couple weeks left, Jordan.
As of August 15th at 8:59 p.m., we do not have that injury yet.
Breaking news. I'm just kidding. So obviously having him out the first couple weeks sucks. But I will say this. I am very, very excited to see a heavy, heavy dose of Demi Sumo Karnbay. I wish we had gotten to see more of him last year. I think he's going to be very exciting out of the backfield. Not necessarily running the ball, but I'm just excited to see him out in the passing game. I think you're going to get to see him catching the ball a lot this year, especially in the first few games. And then we've got some youth behind him. But
Jason Patterson, you got Jason Patterson.
Yeah, you got Jason Patterson, highly touted.
I think maybe third on that depth chart.
Highly touted, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'll be excited to. Obviously, we'll see a little bit more of him early on than what we expected. I'm just hopeful that Chip Trainum is back for Georgia, because I think that game is when we're really good. I mean, not that I'm giving us a very high chance of beating the Bulldogs, but I think if we are going to, we're going to need more of a power back. To be able to run the ball, and without Chip, we don't necessarily have that. So really hopeful that he's back by week 3, but I will be excited to see some of those younger guys and then Demi there in the first couple weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think this is the year that tight ends get involved more? I mean, we talk about
I'm
this.
tired of answering that question every year.
I think I ask you every year.
Yes, this is season 3, and it's always the most asked question.
I think Vince Marrow is listening right now and thinking, thank God he asked that question because he wants to know what Braden Nevius thinks.
I mean, who doesn't?
Because, and I say that I don't think Kentucky has a Boom Williams or a Benny Snell, Chris Rodriguez, Ray Davis, JoJo Kemp. Like Kentucky doesn't have one of those guys this year. And the way Bush Hamdan runs his offense, it's not a spread offense by any means, but it is going to be a lot quicker than what we've seen before. They're going to want to get the ball out and get it out quick. Could lead to some seams with some tight ends up the middle.
We could. I mean, I'm very excited about – here's what I'm excited about. Obviously, we know what we have – well, we are 100% sure we know what we have in Caddis and Dingle. I mean, we've seen those guys for a few years now. But I'll tell you, I'm excited about. And I'm really just thinking about one specific play in the Louisville game, and I'm sure you know the exact play I'm talking about. Yeah. Where Kamari Anderson hurdled a man, and it was just beautiful to watch. I mean, that takes some serious athleticism from a tight end. Now, obviously, I know he's more than likely going to be third on the depth chart, and we won't see him as much as those first two guys. But I mean, to have that guy as your third string tight end, I think that shows some serious depth. And obviously, I think we're going to see Dingle and Anderson, you said, in those like vertical routes, vertical tight end passing game. Maybe not Caddis as much, but I do think those two guys are going to get involved in the passing game a lot. Not saying Caddis won't, but I think we can both agree he's kind of more of our blocking, kind of tough tight end who's going to be making some nice plays in the run game.
And that's exactly what I was leading up to. Who do you see besides Caddis maybe stepping up and being able to hit some guys and put them on their asses?
Well, I mean, I guess we need to hope it's, one of those two guys I just mentioned, right? Dingle or Anderson. I mean, I guess I'll say Dingle just because he's been in the game or just because he's been in the system a little longer. He's probably, and I'm sure he's beefed up just over the years. So I'd say Dingle just based on more experience and more time in the program.
Yeah. And you and I were discussing before this podcast, and we were kind of going over some things. And you mentioned something about Eric Wolford being back. It's funny. Mark Stoops said that he settled maybe a beef with Eric Wolford the Youngstown way. So I don't know if that means they had like a backyard brawl or
they had a Hell in a Cell match, I believe. I'm pretty sure I saw that on Peacock the other night.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe they should pay-per-view that and charge Kentucky fans because I would have paid a lot of money to hear that conversation and see what would happen in the squared circle. But what do you see from the offensive line? Like, do you think there's going to be a massive change year one with Eric Wolford again, or do you think it's going to be kind of a struggle season again? I mean, there's a lot of those guys return. Eli Cox, Marcus Cox. We got Jagger, not Jagger. Yeah, I was thinking of Jagger. And
it's not Friday night yet, man.
Yeah, it's not. One more night.
You're almost there.
But what do you see happening of this offensive line? Because Kentucky fans have been so used to a line that could just keep anybody away, run the ball, and we go back to Benny Snell and how he was so adamant on how much that line really protected him and how that's essentially the reason he's in the NFL. So do you see a year where Kentucky could have a year? I mean, we know John Slarman, obviously really it affected the way things went. But, yeah. I mean, do you see any kind of return to the way the Big Blue Wall once was?
I actually think that having Coach Wofford back is better suited For obviously, I think this is more of the type of culture and attitude that Stoops likes, and I think Wolford will definitely teach that. So I actually think that this O line should come in and be really good. Obviously, from left to middle, you have guys that our fans are familiar with. You've got Marcus Cox at left. You got Jagger at left. Marcus Cox at left tackle, and then Jagger Burton at left guard. And you got Eli Cox at center, and then you've got two new faces on the right side, and they're new faces to our program. However, they are very, very familiar with the SEC. At right tackle, or excuse me, right guard, you've got Jalen Farmer, who is coming in from Florida. So obviously he has been in the grind of the SEC already. And then at right tackle, you've got Gerald Mincey, who's coming from Tennessee. So you've got two former SEC East, of course, in their non-divisions, but two former SEC offensive linemen come in to start on that right side. So while we as fans and members of the UK program may not know these two guys on the right side, they are very familiar with how the SEC works and how physical this league is. So overall, I feel pretty confident in what this O line can do. Obviously, we've spent the past couple years trying to figure out where to play Eli Cox and Jagger Burton permanently. We've been switching them around from guard to center and back and forth for the past couple years, but it seems like both of those guys have their, where they need to be panned out now. So, and I think I'm sure in their mind, it's helpful to them to know where they're going to be. So moving forward, I think this O-line will be, I don't know if you can call them Big Blue Wall yet, but you can call them Big Blue Fence, and we're building.
Braden, I have three names for you. Jamori Macklin, Barryon Brown, Dane Key. How big of a jump, especially with the latter two, how much of a jump do you see from year two to year three? And then talk a little bit more about Jamori Macklin and what does he bring to the table? Because, man, I'll tell you what, I've seen him get some snags. UK put out a video the other night, and he had a one-handed catch that if that would have happened in a game, I think a lot of fans would have been ready to get excited for a national championship.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. In my second season in my dynasty with Kentucky in college football 25, Macklin has really been my star receiver. So I think now how that translates to real life, we'll have to see.
The real question, though, is did Dane Key and Barryon Brown get drafted?
I think Barryon went round 1. And then Dane got drafted like round 4, I think, in mine. But I'll say this, though. I'll leave the Macklin talk to you because I know you're very excited to talk about him. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe as far as transfer wide receivers go, I think he's second in incoming transfer receivers and touchdowns. But as far as our two guys we know, Barryon and Dane, go, I think we'll just continue to see progress from those two guys. I think Dane more than Barryon had a little bit of a sophomore slump, but I do expect Dane to be. I think Dane's gonna show us something this year. Obviously, I think people are excited about Barryon just because of the speed and what we've seen. But I have a big feeling that Dane's gonna open some eyes this year and really kind of blossom into what we've kind of expected from him.
Yeah, you mentioned Jamori Macklin. I mean, we talk about a guy that second team AAC last year, 57 passes for over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. A guy that received for 163 yards versus Temple last year. Just a guy that a whole lot of excitement already for him there. And one had to question, the level of talent, what he was playing against, and you got to think, man, if he could provide any kind of spark like that to Kentucky, like that wide receiver room may look different, a whole lot different. Now, we assume that Barryon Brown and Dane Key are going to play a lot better, and just from the things I've been hearing, they've looked a lot more focused, and they've seen more focus throughout the offseason and becoming more of leaders for the team rather than, I'm going to be the guy, I'm going to be the one that shows up, and that's going to be that. And we talk about Fred Ferrier, another guy, a Kentucky ground kid, like a guy that could be a fundamental piece in the years to come. And don't get me wrong, I think this receiving room is still really young, but I feel like that's been a trend over the past few years where, besides Tavion Robinson and some of those guys, like for the majority of the last few seasons, even in 2021, Kentucky was had a really young wide receiver core.
Yeah. Overall, and one name you didn't mention was Anthony Brown Stevens.
Right. Yes.
And I mean, I think there was a lot of excitement for him last season just based on what we heard in the offseason. And maybe he didn't quite live up to the expectations, but he showed flashes. Obviously, you can't teach speed, and he certainly has a lot of that to go around. So I'm excited to see him this year too. And obviously, our receivers only going to be as good as our quarterback when it's all said and done. So I think as long as Vandegrift can get those guys the ball, it's going to be a really good year for the offense.
And not to revisit last year, but do you think that maybe Devin Leary, you think maybe he set those guys up for failure, or do you think that some of that was on them too with some of those missed catches?
Well, I mean, I think honestly, at the beginning of the season, there were a lot of there were a lot of drop balls, right? And then I think that probably diminished the confidence that Leary had, and then I just think the whole dynamic from week one was off with Leary and the receivers, and it really never was able to recover. I think the only game we really saw, I think what we expected to see the whole season from those guys last year was the Tennessee game. Unfortunately, it came in a loss, but I think that game was kind of like what we expected to see throughout the season, and it just didn't happen.
All right, Braden, as we dig a little bit deeper into this defensive depth chart, I think we need to start with the defensive line, right? I mean, Deion Walker is a game changer, okay, in more than one way. He can rush the quarterback, as we know. He'll take 2 or 3 offensive linemen and pull them around the field like it's nothing. And this is something he's done since his freshman year. As long as he stays healthy, and he looks pretty healthy. He doesn't miss a meal. We're going to see him make an impact from day one. As far as the rest of the defensive line, Keyshawn Silver's back. I think we're going to see a lot, some even more improvement. Looked great last year. I don't really think he didn't really have really any game he struggled. Trayvon Ripka, Octavius Oxendine, I think that defensive line, they've lost a couple of guys, but they're going to be really they're going to be set up really good going into this season. I'm really excited to see what even Kendrick Gilbert has. Redshirt freshman came in, and he's killed it in camp. Braden, what's your take on the defensive line? Do you think it's going to be better or worse than last year?
Well, I think it'll 100% be better, and here's why. I mean, think about it. Every name you just mentioned, we've already heard before. This is an experienced group who has only gotten stronger, and then of course, I think this conversation starts and ends with Deion Walker. That man is an absolute beast of a human being. I didn't know that. I didn't know that God made people like that. He's just an absolute beast. I mean, we're talking 6'6", 345 pounds. That's a lot of man right there. And here's the thing, right? Um, you mentioned Dion and just everything he can do. I mean, I don't expect him to do it consistently, but I remember a play against Florida last year where he backed out in the pass coverage and it hit a tight end and forced an interception. I mean, he can do it all, and he's surprisingly athletic for his size.
It was Trevin Wallace that got that interception, if I remember
It
correctly.
was, yeah, it was.
The Gator himself.
So he's surprisingly athletic for his size. Obviously, he can get to the quarterback. He can stuff the run. I mean, he's going to be a first-round draft pick for sure, potentially even top 10. He's obviously he's Kentucky's best defensive player since Josh Allen, and I don't really think that's really up for debate. And then as far as the other guys you mentioned, they're all seasoned veterans who have been in the program for a long time, and just guys I expect to get better just as the years goes on, as the years go on. And so I think that the defensive line is going to be a huge strength of this team, which obviously, given the conference that Kentucky plays in, that is huge, and it's huge for this team. And I think it's just, without a doubt the best defensive line Stoops has had in his tenure at Kentucky.
And that says a lot because, as we know, one of the characteristics of a Kentucky football team is their physicality. And I don't think you see more physicality on anywhere else in the field than you do that defensive line.
Absolutely, and I know we obviously give a lot of time talking about Deion Walker, and that's much, much
Appreciated?
much appreciated, much deserved,
Yeah,
and
well deserved.
yeah, well deserved.
I knew you were going to get it eventually.
Yeah, you listen. I mean, trying to do a podcast with a speech impediment has its drawbacks, but
And it's 9:30 at night.
what?
I said, and it's 9:30 at night.
That is true. That is true. But anyway, I mean, we're not even. I mean, you mentioned them briefly, but I mean, in years past, we'd be spending time talking about Keyshawn Silver and Octavius Oxendine. Those guys are. I think those guys are gonna be really good this year, and I'm excited to see both of them as well.
Speaking of guys that, and I don't want your fan answer to this. I want your honest answer. Speaking of guys that we've seen a lot of, JJ Weaver's a super senior this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he has what it takes to take that next step and be a competitive force and a force that can maybe make or break the outcome of a game?
Yes, I do. I think as far as his tenure up to this point, I don't want to say it's been disappointing because I don't think that's fair. But I think we have expected a lot from him, and he hasn't always. And of course, I think a lot of it has to do with, he had a pretty significant injury in 2020, and that obviously hinders your performance throughout the years. But I do think, because obviously there's no coming back after this year. I think it's all in his mind for him, and I think he knows that this is his year to prove that he's a pro football player and to prove that that he can be that game changing player that he has the talent to be. And I think he's going to put it all together this year and have a really good season.
Is this the last year of super seniors, or is that next year?
2020. It's 20. I think it'd be next year
Because you have the redshirt freshmen. You had freshmen that came in, so that pushed it back a year. So, yeah, I think you're right. I think
everyone from 2020. So, I mean, this would be their senior year technically.
Yeah. I guess it could go 2 years out from now, right? If you had an existing injury.
I mean, there are players in college football who are going into their 8th season. At this point, you can be a I mean, like there are
probably players in college football right now that are going into their second wife and a second mortgage.
That is probably true. Which I mean, that's just where we are these days, and that's okay. I'm all for. I mean, I mean, I look at guys, and they haven't done this, but like we mentioned some guys off air earlier, like Trayvon Ribka and Khalil Saunders. It feels like those guys have been here forever, but really they're only in their third and fourth year, some of them. So
Yeah. We look at some linebackers here: De'Aaron Jackson, Pop Dumas Johnson, Alex Afari at that nickel. We've seen De'Aaron Jackson and Alex Afari. What do you think about Pop Dumas Johnson? Do you think that senior year player helps that linebacker core, and to what extent?
I'm so excited about him, man. I can't tell you. I mean, getting a player of his caliber from Georgia. I'm surprised he transferred. Maybe
you think a little bit of that had to do with Brock?
It very well could. I'm not. I'm sure. Well, maybe it had to do with he actually wanted to get a college diploma or a college
degree.
Degree. College degree. We're having to put that explicit tag on this podcast. I apologize. Listen, I only went to high school, so that's what I think of when I think of higher education is that diploma. No, maybe he wants a college degree, and that 41% graduation rate at Georgia just wasn't cutting it for him, I guess.
He also wanted to save himself from a DUI.
I'd say so. But no, I'm very excited. I mean, because really outside of De'Aaron Jackson and then you mentioned Alex Afari at the nickel, I think there was maybe some concern about that linebacker group, but I think Dumas Johnson coming in here really kind of shores up that linebacking room very well. And outside of Deion Walker, I think he's going to end up being our best player on the defensive end. And that's no disrespect to other guys. I mean, because I see you cocking your head. I'm assuming you're thinking of maybe Max Hairston or.
I know Max Hairston. Okay, I have a hot take. Everybody listen to this hot take.
I'm listening.
Max Hairston is going to be a better defensive player, a better player than Deion Walker. I said it.
Wow.
I was talking to somebody who has been to some practices and has seen some things that said when Max Hairston is locked in, there's not a single player on the field that can catch a football. Like, if he's defending a player, he is not getting the ball. And all throughout camp, Max Hairston, even when the offense is locked in, Max Hairston can stop anybody. Now, we'll see how that transitions. Obviously, when you play in camp, you know how players do certain things. I mean, they're brothers. They face each other every day. They know what's going to happen. They know their next step before the offensive player does. But mark my words, Maxwell Hairston is a NFL first rounder and could very well potentially be the best player on the team.
I'll tell you who I'm excited about. Since you're mentioning guys you're excited to see, Zion Childress. He was all over the place last year, and I think he's due for a big season. I kind of see him. Obviously, I just mentioned three guys I think will be better overall players than him, but I expect him to take the biggest jump from season to season. I think Zion Childress is going to be very excited to see on that Kentucky defense.
Braden, before we started recording this podcast, we were talking about DJ Waller. Do you see and this is funny that, Ohio State, Michigan, probably the two biggest rivals in college football, maybe. I mean, it's up for debate. It's funny to see those two players, a player from each team, battling at Kentucky for a starting position.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think wins that battle? Because I know you were pretty bullish on DJ Waller,
yeah.
But I tell you what, man, I've been a big Jansen Dunn fan from the very beginning.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about JQ Hardaway too. Like, how much do these guys see the field?
I think you have to give the slight edge to Dunn just because he has a year of experience in the program over Waller, and also Waller has missed a little bit of time here in fall camp. So I think going into the season, Dunn probably gets the edge in that race. But I think Waller is going to see the field pretty quickly once things get kicked off. I'm excited about him. Obviously, I mean he's coming from championship pedigree at Michigan. He's got that experience. But then you mentioned JQ Hardaway and these other guys. I mean, we've got a lot of depth, it seems, in the secondary this year, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, and those are just the corners. You look at the safeties. You got Jordan Lovett. You got Zion Childress. You got a guy that's been bragged upon, Ty Bryant, that's come on and taken a huge role.
And Jordan, if I may interrupt you, just once again, I mean, are you noticing something when you're saying these names?
Yeah, they're all returning.
They're all returning, and I think that's huge.
You had a guy in the safety room, Christian Story, a guy from Alabama.
Yeah.
Like, Kentucky has upgraded in just about every level. And we talk about maybe some of the inconsistencies in the offensive coordinating position. Man, you got a sixth year, right? Brad White's been defensive coordinator.
White since 2019, right? Since 2019, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
Because 18 was Matt House.
Yeah, give or take.
So 5 years,
So Brad White's been, he's been in the system for even longer than that.
Yeah.
You add just players in every position group that have been here, plus you sprinkle in, a Michigan transfer here, an Alabama transfer there. Like, Kentucky's got the depth on defense to be really scary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as far as this team goes, my concerns, honestly, are really nowhere on defense. The only slight concern I have defensively is, which I mentioned it already a little bit earlier, is the depth of the linebacker the linebacker room.
Lineman.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, I think this defense is set up to be just as good, if not better, than that defense in 2018. I think they've got the guys, and then obviously they've got the coaching experience with White being there, fifth year, Stoops, obviously defensive background. There is no doubt in my mind that this defense is going to be extremely good. Now, of course, we play some of the most high-powered offenses in the country this year. You got Tennessee, you got Ole Miss, you got Georgia, you got Texas. I mean, our schedule is absolutely brutal. But I think that this defense, honestly, and I'm not just talking about in the SEC, I'm talking about in the country. I think this defense is going to be top 10, top 15 in the country.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I guess that's my hot take of the night. Since you gave one already, I'm not sure if that's considered a hot take, but we'll go with it.
I think my take was a little bit hotter than yours was.
Maybe so.
I'm willing to hear the criticism. I am willing to. I want to hear it all. I want the smoke, Braden. I want the smoke.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to jump on that train just because I think Deion Walker is going to be a top 10 draft pick, and I don't quite see that for Max Harrison, but I certainly think he'll be obviously one of the best corners we've had at Kentucky in a long time. I mean, it's just one-on-one really more than anything. So, yeah, I mean, but as far as the defense goes, like I said, very excited. I really don't have any concerns. I think, and we kind of already touched on earlier, Jordan. I think a large portion of the success of this team is going to fall on the shoulders of number 12, Brock Vandagriff.
I agree, and everything surrounding him. I mean, if it goes both ways, right? Your receivers need to be able to take care of business, so your quarterback can look good, and your quarterback needs to get the ball to him for the receivers to look good. So he's got some experienced pieces. He's got some pieces surrounding him, but I believe you're right. It all comes down to number 12. It all comes down from the guy with the belt buckle that's got the phone clip on it, right? Man, I am so excited for the season to be here. I cannot wait. I got to ask you, how about these new LED lights? Don't they look absolutely badass?
Yes, they do. I haven't been to I haven't been to a game at Kroger Field since I believe 2019. Uh, I think it was the Louisville game 2019, which you talk about a monsoon of a game. But anyway,
It's cold.
I have to. I mean, I think I got to get to at least one night game this year just to see that, if anything, because I mean, obviously we've seen the ones at Alabama and South Carolina are the ones that come to mind when I first think of it. That light show.
We'll miss.
I'm so excited that the
First game's a 7:45 kickoff.
First, I think two of the first three games are night kickoffs. So we'll really get some exposure. And also, I mean, just a quick side note: two of our first three games nationally televised, ABC.
Yeah,
that's
a huge merger. I think that people don't understand as far as. Yes, Kentucky loses the SEC intro, the classic SEC to CBS intro, but they gain a lot.
It's not like we were playing on CBS anyway.
Exactly, maybe once a year. So it's good to see that Kentucky's going to get some more eyes, and that's just it's national television versus an ESPN where some people subscribe, some people don't get like. Those channels are always going to produce a whole lot more eyes in front of them. So great to see. Man,
a whole lot more mid-afternoon kickoffs than what we're used to. I feel like over the past 10 years, it's either been noon or night for Kentucky. But I think with the ABC and SEC kind of merger here, we're going to get a lot more mid-afternoon kickoffs.
So Braden, I have a proposition for you.
Okay.
I guess I need your opinion more than anything. So the fourth week Ohio game, assuming, we'll be working that game, Zach Bryan plays that night in Louisville. So it's a 12:45 kick. Game probably ends at what, 4:45?
I'd say more like 4.
If we're there for an hour after the game, I'm sorry, 4 o'clock. I don't know why I was thinking 4. I meant 3:45. Yeah. But assuming, work isn't work and it's not too bad, do you think I could get out of that and, maybe head and see Zach Bryan?
Well, I don't know what time is the concert.
It hasn't come out yet because it's at Bourbon and Beyond. So we don't really know. Ooh. So I might be hitting a little bit of, Kentucky football and Zach Bryan doubleheader.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that Kentucky is blowing Ohio out of the water.
And I can get just about everything done before the game even ends.
So maybe you can kind of get things done and get out, before the crowd gets out. I'd say that'd be your best bet.
Got to stay for the interviews and everything, but that shouldn't be that ain't.
Well,
that ain't
we've got some other guys who can take care of that. So you can get
that ain't no thing.
You can get Jansen. You can get Jansen to go to that game.
Yeah. We'll just have Trace do it, all right?
Yeah, just have Trace do it. There you
go. Or Tim.
Yeah, I know Tim loves talking to the players. That's his favorite thing to do. There's so much in common.
I think it's about time we head out, man. It was so fun being back. I cannot wait until next week when we can dive a little bit deeper into the games and maybe hear a little bit more about what the coaches say just leading up to an actual game in Kroger Field. I'm so excited.
Me too, man. I'm happy to be back.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you for being on as always. Thank you to the listeners for enjoying our podcast, and we'll catch you next time.